Today's storybook is called Growing Frogs. Growing Frogs. The dedication is for June Slade, VF, for Rebecca with much love, AB. VF is the author, Vivian French, and AB is the illustrator, Allison Bartlett. Growing Frogs. Once, when I was little, my mom read me a story about a frog that grew bigger and bigger and bigger. Afterward, Mom asked me if I'd like to watch some real frogs growing. I know where there's a pond with lots of frog eggs in it, she said. We could bring some home. I was frightened. I don't want any frogs jumping around getting bigger and bigger and bigger, I said. But Mom gave me a hug. It's only a story, she said. Even when our frogs grow up, they'll still be smaller than my hand. Oh, I said. Okay. The next day, we went to look at the pond. The water was dark brown, and there was gray jelly stuff floating at the top. Yuck, I said. There's the frog spawn, said Mum, and she pointed to the gray jelly stuff. I bet that was laid last Friday night. The frogs were croaking so loudly I couldn't get to sleep. Male frogs croak to attract female frogs for mating. Mating occurs when the male frog covers the female's eggs with his sperm. A tadpole will grow only if an egg joins with a sperm. This joining is called fertilization. You see the black dots in the middle of each jelly shell, said Mum. That's going to be a tadpole. Where are the frogs? I asked. Tadpoles grow into frogs, she said. Little ones. No giant frogs here. Mum put some pond weed and some stones into a bag. She filled a bucket with pond water. Then I scooped a little of the frog spawn into it. Always use the pond water for growing frogs at home. Tap water has chemicals like fluoride in it that might poison the frogs. When we got home, we put everything into a big fish tank in the kitchen. The cat kept peering at it, so we put a wire net over the top. I counted 27 little black dots. Each dot was inside its own jelly shell. The tank needs to be kept somewhere that's cool, away from direct sunlight. Every day, when I woke up, I went straight downstairs to look at the frog spawn. The little dots grew into bigger dots, and then into tiny curls. And one morning, I saw the first tadpole wriggling out of its shell. At first, the tadpoles didn't do much. They just stayed close to their jelly shells and nibbled at the pondweed. But after 2 or 3 days, they looked quite different. There were feathery things on their heads, and I could see their eyes. The feathery things are called gills, and they're what underwater animals use for breathing. They swim very fast. Ten of the eggs didn't ever hatch. The black dots went dull and cloudy, and Mum took them away. The main reason eggs don't hatch is that they aren't fertilized during mating. Then we cleaned out the tank and put in fresh pond water. pond weed, and pond water. One of the tadpoles swam into my hand when I was putting a stone back. It was slippery and slithery, and it made me jump. After the tadpoles hatch, the pond water needs to be changed at least twice a week. After a while, I got used to having tadpoles and I didn't look at them so often. When Mom told me their little feathery things had disappeared, I didn't believe her, but it was true. Tadpoles have gills on the outside of their bodies at first. Then they grow gills inside their bodies, and the outside ones disappear. I was the one who saw the next change, though. Look! I shouted, and Mum rushed to see. Some of the tadpoles had grown 2 little bumps. Mum said the bumps would grow into back legs. They grew very quickly. One day, there were 2 little bumps. The next day, the bumps were stumps. The day after that, they looked almost like real legs. And when the feet unfolded, they were webbed like tiny, brownish-green fans. They aren't tadpoles anymore, I said. They're not quite frogs. The not quite frogs grew front legs next, and their tails got shorter, and their mouths got wider. Now they're frogs, Mum said. Baby ones. Soon, the baby frogs were popping up and gulping at the surface of the water. One of them tried to climb onto the stones, but it slid off. Mum said they were getting ready to leave the water. Grown-up frogs breathe air, she said. That's what the stones are for, so our frogs can climb out of the water and breathe. As tadpoles slowly turn into frogs, they grow lungs for breathing air, and their gills disappear. Not long after that, Mum said it was time to take our baby frogs back to live in the pond with all the other baby frogs. I was sorry to leave them, but Mum said we could come back and visit every day. Baby frogs need space to grow and room to hop around. Grown-up frogs live most of their lives on land, returning to ponds only when they breed. One rainy morning, a week later, Mum woke me up very early. Hurry, she said, and we ran downstairs and out to the pond. There were hundreds of tiny frogs hopping over the grass. They're looking for dark, wet places to live, said Mum. Mum said, but they won't go far, and in a couple of years they'll be back to lay frog spawn of their own. Will they be bigger then, I asked. Just a little, said Mum. Good, I said. I like having frogs jumping around and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Growing frogs.